There's a sign on the highway. There's a fork in the road. A lifetime of lessons learned don't mean nothing, it shows. Armchair doctor, experts making all the rules, selling us their theories while they take us all for fools. And there's nowhere left to hide on that freedom road. Don't tell me what to think, don't tell me how to live on that freedom road. Get your hand out of my pocket, I got no more to give, I got no more to give. There's a cop in the distance behind a big box tree. There's a crime being committed somewhere, but the radar gun's on me. A quiet quarter afternoon, I'm doing 105. Like a fat kid on a seesaw, all tilted to one side. And there's nowhere left to hide, and no one's putting up a fight on that freedom road. Don't tell me what to think, don't tell me how to live on that freedom road. Get your hand out of my pocket, I got no more to give, I got no more to give. Clipboard, he's just out of school. He tells me that I'm doing wrong, something he could never do. The writing in a textbook ain't no substitute for life. The rules and regulations, they're just dumbing down our minds. And there's nowhere left to hide, and no one's putting up a fight. They're all just waiting round to die on that freedom road. Don't tell me what to think, don't tell me how to live on that freedom road. Get your hand out of my pocket, I got no more to give on that freedom road. Don't tell me what to think, don't tell me how to live on that freedom road. Get your hand out of my pocket, I got no more to give, I got no more to give.
I just quickly, the only way to introduce Sacha is to say we're going to talk to someone who's had an extraordinary life, a real visionary. And there's so much to pick from that I don't want to waste time introducing him rather than talking to the man. So let's bring him in and bring Martin here. There's Martin in the background. There's Sacha, thanks so much for sharing your time with us, brother. And I have to say, I've just been reading about you, I think you're born in 66.
I can't remember so long ago, Michael, but
Well, I think we're
very
next
happy
to each
meet
other.
you.
I think we're a few days. I think you're a few days older than me, so I'll give you the respect of being older. But but what you've done with your time on the planet is extraordinary. And what do you think is the motivation force that's just been driving you all your life? Because I want to talk about what you're doing now, but what's the driving force, you think?
Hearing a lot of rumbling from your microphone, just so you know that, brother. I wonder if you're hearing that as well, Martin. But good to meet you, Michael. And irreverence to false light imposed authority is really my shtick, and that's the entire signature of my life. Is just not feeling obliged to take the knee to Caesar, to take the knee to the Catholic Church, to take the knee to government, to take the knee to the Babylonian priest bankster class that have been essentially governing the matrix for the last 500 plus years. So yeah, that irreverence is the key word, I think, but the right kind of irreverence.
Do you think it's like you're an older soul that's come with this sort of mission for that? Because so many people are trapped deep within it, that it's so refreshing to meet someone that's like that and feels like they've been sort of, we live in a world where we're controlled by forces beyond our reasoning.
I don't sit around pondering that question too much nowadays, because what I determined a long time ago was just to lean fully into embodiment, enactment, and manifestation of mission and vision, which honestly does not give me it does not allow me much time for pondering the whys and the wherefores. I just reckon with the fact that the status quo is rotten. I reckon with the fact that we're coming out of a civilizational wheel that is predicated on blood sacrifice, on a harvest of humanity, on usury and debt, on domination and control and all the rest of it. And that's the very yoke, so to speak, that we are now on the verge of emancipating ourselves from. But the only way to escape the matrix in that sense is to become fully actualized in the living present, fully focused in the now, and watching the motion of your own feet upon the path, causing no harm, loss, or injury to other living souls. And again, hashtag fuck the government. Yeah.
It's you're also living in Mexico. I know there's Max Egan there. Does Mexico allow you more freedom of thought? Because over here we're so heavily censored with everything.
Yeah. Well, I don't even stop long enough to ask that question. I've not had anyone try to molest me here. Put it that way. I don't live in Mexico. Mexico is one of the.
Oh, sorry, I heard that you were.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I spent a lot of time here because we've got land. We've got a big development project here. We've got development projects in Africa, in America, and also in Southeast Asia, in Bali, Indonesia. So I generally spend a lot of time in airports. A hell of a lot of time.
Oh, really? How about moving forward then? Because a lot of people come on and talk about the past and the COVID stories and stuff, but you really are a visionary. So, and not only a visionary, but you're able to put some of these visions into practice, which is the extraordinary thing.
Well,
so why don't you talk about where you see us going as a species? Because our hope is golden at the moment.
Yes. Well, full tilt ascension, full tilt biological ascension, a full tilt emancipation from the draconian dragnet. I see a glittering golden horizon, and it's not even so much a horizon as it is the geometry of light, which is meeting us right here, right now. It's already arrived in that sense. I think that fearlessness and an irreverence to the fiction of time, again, which is why I don't acknowledge time signatures. I think they're stupid. They are actually the source code of the kingdom of the devil, 1260 time, a Babylonian calendric system imposed upon humanity to break our relationship with the circadian rhythms and the natural galactic cycles. So when we realize that when we place our attention into the fiction of time and entropy, that is what invokes disease and death into the cells, into the biological matrix, so to speak. So we've got to be very, very careful now. And we need to be very mindful and begin to withdraw our attention from false gods. 1260 time is the ultimate false god. It is Cronus, the titan that devours its own young. Cronus, the crown, the state government, and the Catholic Church. So again, it's all part of Babylonian dream spelling. And thankfully, we're all waking up more or less to that thrall now. But again, I just underscore the fact that I see an exquisitely affirmative, abundant, and prosperous world emerging through the toxicity of the fog of this civilizational collapse right now.
How do you think the dark side of our human nature would go in a world of abundance? Because historically, there is a greed to a lot of human beings that corrupt, what we say, idealistic situations. So how do you see the human nature thriving in a world of abundance without sort of turning on each other like we
well
see?
Again, the shade, shadow, shade and shadow and are simply the unresolved aspects of the children of God. So wherever I find a battle, or wherever I'm projecting division or conquest in this world, that speaks to a deficiency in me, which I will ultimately be forced by the wheel of samsara to address that deficiency in myself. There is no bogeyman out there. It's why I feel competent and confident to challenge the status quo, to challenge the fiction of governments again, and the multilateral institutions which have tried and palpably failed to contain and control human spirit. You know, if you go back to 1066 Doomsday, go back about 1,000 years, we see the beginning of the tabulation of land and the registration of souls. And that became the new science, which was controlling and harvesting and understanding how many chickens or sheep or cows or turkeys, and then pasturing animals, and then kind of molesting humans into off this living soil into towns and into cities, which is the kill grid, the matrix. So all of that is a complete false light. Again, it's a false light complex, which we've allowed ourselves to be hustled into civilizationally. And now we realize that we can simply remove ourselves from the grid. We don't need to live in toxicity. We don't need to be sequestered into kill grids and wage slavery. We have opt-out scenarios, but the opt-outs only emerge in proportion to the degree to which we self-awaken to our own divinity in that sense. So that I see as not being an issue, which you've just raised, the specter of how do people with shadow survive in an abundant or prosperous society. Well, they don't, and they can't, because if you're trying to carry that kind of shadow, that kind of contrast into this new golden era, this new earth, you won't survive it. So there's a bifurcation that's already happening planetarily. We're aware of that. The whole COVIDiacy was kind of the line in the sand, essentially, that demarcated the living from the dead and said, who are you? Do you choose to step over into affirmation, into life, into liberty, into consciousness, into the new earth? Or do you still want to roll your sleeves up and take the knee to Caesar and render unto Caesar? And that, of course, has seen a tremendous split, which is why we're going through a geopolitical and socioeconomic kind of schizophrenia at the moment. And the world is very much broken up into the those who embrace control and government and militancy and numbers and Skynet and surveillance and control and smart cities, nanochips and all of that shit, versus the living sons and daughters of God, the living men and women of the living soil. And the living men and women of the living soil, the ones who do affirm and receive and surrender to God's grace, are the ones who activate the armor of God. And once the armor of God is activated, you become immunized and inured to those others who carry that contrast and carry that shade, or wield guns and and weapons of destruction. The invisible wars that are upon us are just as serious as the visible ones. I mean, the weaponization of the biosphere, the nanotech and nanobot interventionism, the Magellan syndrome, which has now intervened into pretty much every biological system on the planet. You could safely say that every single human being now suffers from Magellan syndrome. We have a confluence of satanic chemistry activated within our beautiful bodies, connected to the aluminum, the barium, the phosphate, the strontium, the fluoride, and of course the 5G weaponized frequency sets, which activate a whole set of other chemical responses inside the human body, which ultimately make their way toward the pineal, calcify the pineal, and clip us off from our divine umbilical. So there is an invisible war as well against the morphogenetic upshift or the biological ascension event that is fast impending. There have been tremendous efforts from elements within the star nations to prohibit and prevent that ascension process and event. That has failed, and the ascension is certainly assured at this time.
So you see a planet with like two great societies, the one, like you said, where people are accepting the light, and the others who just are not ready to come across yet.
Yeah.
Or just want want someone else to take control of their lives, basically.
Yes. In simple terms, it's a perfect bifurcation. It's what you would expect as the culmination to the symphony of duality. So we've lived through a epochal cycle of duality at the meta-galactical level. And this temporal realm that we inhabit here in the third density, so-called third density universe, or this element within the universe, this quadrant within the universe, is defined by being suspended in the realm of duality. And that's fine. It's almost like a cauldron of creation within which we undream, we forget ourselves as we fall from grace into this space. But and then we rediscover who we are within this void, within the realm of duality, and through, again, the wheel of samsara, through dharma and karma and multiple incarnations, we ultimately reforge spiritus maximus. We come back to the convention as a living son or daughter of God, and then we move even higher than that into bodhisattva state, which is connected absolutely to the alpha, the omega, the God. We then come back into this world in service to one another and to the fellowship of man. And that's more or less where we're at now, where sufficient enlightened souls have now reconvened in the temporal realm of duality, precisely in order to lean our flames in together and to activate the morphogenetic upshift amongst the collective. So that's a meta-alchemical phenomenon which is already started and very much underway.
With the two different worlds then, are the ones who are not ready to come across, are they younger souls? Then, I mean, do the souls have different ages?
They're space dust. It's not about younger souls. Younger souls, in a sense, are even more connected to the umbilical of the divine. So it's rather like babes coming into this world through the water of the mother's womb. They're closer to heaven than we are. And if we would just shut the fuck up and let them actually bring their stellar linguistics in, rather than programming them with bad syntax and doing goo gaga and teaching kids from the age of 0, trying to impose our false light will onto these infants, we utterly mutate them from inception. So when we wake up in this era that we're just moving into now, we will stop doing that. We'll stop programming infants from inception. Conception itself will be conscious. We will be invoking those children through the dream state into the spermatoza and into the egg and into the womb and the gestation. And these children that come into the world, the true indigos, angelic indigos in that sense, are going to become the emancipation for not just this world, but for all worlds in temporality. So why is humanity under? Why have a dozen scientists been popped recently under strange circumstances, who are all exploring very esoteric and vanguard technologies? Well, it's because there are lower elemental star nations or extraterrestrial intelligences which have they've captured this world already under certain protocols, and we're under a certain kind of embargo. And the fact of the matter is that the scientists who have crossed the line, in a sense, and have already done a deal with the Faustian Pact and are engaged with the corporation, and are being financed through the corporation, so to speak, and have already, in a sense, moved against their own conscience. And I have to be very cautious saying this because I'm aware that people get very upset by this kind of language. But the fact of the matter is that those 12 or 13 scientists who were popped could not have been popped had they not crossed the line. Because if you are wearing the armor of God, you are not poppable. You cannot be assassinated. You cannot be killed, because your will is divine, and unless you grant permissions, you will not catch a silver bullet. So I know already that the geometry of the living moment is perfect always and always for every single soul in whatever circumstance they find themselves. That is your chosen vector. You have moved and migrated your soul to this particular vector, this particular incarnation, and every single thing that manifests on your screen of life is entirely appropriate to you in the now. The only thing is, do you have the grace to be able to enter the I am and bear witness without judgment and condemnation of yourself, your life, your incarnation, and be able to then, in the state of pure witness of the I am, to transmute the status quo into a higher expression. So in that sense, we all have the technology hardwired in to us to be able to transmute and then transpose a higher outcome onto everything that's facing us. And that's where absolution and redemption and salvation come. That's the second coming, is our awakening to the Christic and Sophic flame that exists, self-realizes, self-fulfills within each of us individually. So we're not subject to anything out there. We never were subject to anything out there. But when we do fall into infancy and delinquency, we then do surrender or abnegate our throne of sovereignty. We surrender it. And if we do surrender it to the corporation or to the government or the Catholic Church or any number of churches and to the demiurge, we then open up the chink in the armor and we can catch a silver bullet. We can be assassinated or sacrificed or what have you. But there's also a higher alchemy at work here, which is connected to the ritual sacrifice of innocence, where you have to understand that the infants being sacrificed on the slab are the ones at the soul level who are in charge of that venue. They are the ones controlling that venue. They are angelic beings offering themselves up, in a sense, to become the blood that is spilt and imbibed, and that blood becomes the living principle that turns the draconian serpent around and alchemizes the dark hearts of the satanic order. So we're moving from a satanic order, Michael, now into a Luciferic order, a false light jurisdiction, but it's only a temporary state. And then we move by the grace of God into the full emancipation of Homo sapiens sapien, and we alchemize into Homo luminous wholesale. And then as we do that, this planetary being, Tara, this extraordinary earth plane upon which we exist, fully activates as being the atom seed of the temporal universe, and we become the point of redemption to all of those star nations as well. They all ultimately find their way back home through the Jacob's ladder that is the activated human mRNA DNA.
Can I ask, when you say surrender to the surrender their sovereignty, do you think people do that en masse because they're frightened by their power rather than frightened of something bad happening to them?
Well, beautifully stated, Michael, because fear of authority out there is fear of your own immanence and your own majesty. So the minute one is reconciled with relationship with self, and you've made friends with self, you can then rekindle relationship with self, and then you see your majesty and your mantle is assumed. You take your throne, you become crowned, and that's where you enter the true God's kingdom on earth, and you can then see the world through the eyes of a child, which is to say, without judgment or condemnation. That becomes a very magical disposition where your will can now be transposed into this world and manifest outcomes. So that's why I'm certainly for the last few short years speaking about embodiment, enactment, and manifestation. Those are the three living principles we need to concern ourselves with, not, fighting battles and sword fighting in the trenches. I mean, I'm a frontline activist. I've been doing that my whole life, but there's a station beyond frontline activism where simply engaging and actualizing full consciousness becomes, in that sense, the most ferocious weapon, and it's not a weapon that injures. It's something which absolves and redeems the status quo into a far higher outcome. So it was, of course, Nelson Mandela who famously said that, people are afraid of themselves, and this is our ultimate folly as humanity. We're afraid of our greatness, of our majesty. And that, of course, is very, very true.
And that's the real tragedy, isn't it? There's, I just wrote something about a young trans person who took their own life in suburban. They're gone from us, their voices. And I think it's such a waste, because you've got such greatness inside of you. I mean, it's clear that we're born with the seeds of greatness, and society just wants to crush it.
I don't agree with that, Michael, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
I don't agree that I don't agree that it's a tragedy, and I'll tell you why. Because one has got to reconcile with the perfection of the living moment as being the geometry of God. The geometry of God is everywhere. The I am is the geometry of God. My capacity to bear witness even to the horrors and the travesties of life, and to reconcile to the fact that those calamities are perfectly anointed and perfectly appointed in the living moment for very good reason, in order to act as the catalyst for me, community, the world to activate into a higher state of consciousness. I mean, I've recently been through, in the last 18 months, I lost a beloved, after 7-year relationship, a girlfriend who I'd walked with for the last 2.5 years of her life into an agonizing death, and trying to keep her alive and watching that process of death very, very closely and seeing it right up to the last minute. And it was horrendous. Everything about it was disgusting, abysmal, abhorrent. I mean, the agony of that particular journey of that blessed soul to watch was the ugliest thing I've ever had to witness. And I grew up in a war, for Christ's sake, for 60
That's
years.
what I was going to ask, yeah.
Right, but watching the death of the beloved in a very, very painful and traumatic, protracted death, and crippling, agonizing, and impossible to ultimately to escape. One had to be present in the whole process, very present, forced to be present in it. And I was forced in the process of those just over 2.5 years, almost 2.5 years of her death, forced into reckoning with that close up and personal. And so because I was forced into that, I did see absolutely the perfection in her dharma, in her journey. I was forced into looking into her so deeply, and her soul and her anguish and her pain, and to see and explore it with her, which I was doing up until the day that she died, talking this stuff through. Why is this happening? How can somebody who is a stunningly beautiful model, temple dancer, exquisite artist, performer, young, just exquisite lotus flower, how can somebody like that be stricken into something that is so crippling and agonizing and debilitating and ugly for a protracted period? That was a very needful and necessary journey into the underworld that I am very honored to have been the one to walk with her through that passage of death, because it forced me into that reckoning as well. And I ultimately saw, certainly in the last day, when this beatific smile came on her face and she was communicating with angelic beings. Her body was crippled every 6 or 7 minutes. I had to pick her up and turn her over. I could pick her up with one hand, no problem. She diminished to like 25 kilograms or something. It was just ridiculous. But having to turn her every few minutes because of the agony, and morphine nothing was working. And yet the beatific smile on her face was there. And I saw her engaging with the angelics just before she died. And it was just a complete symphony. And then I realized, and we spoke about this the day before she died, that she had come in to end a 7th generational curse in the wombs of all the females in her family, who all, before the age of 30, became debilitated by a crippling disease, which also invoked multiple cancers and so on. And she realized, she knew that she was literally ending, that she'd come in at the soul level to end a generational curse in her particular lineage. So her mission was fulfilled. My mission was fulfilled by being alongside her in that journey and bearing witness to that and being the witness to it. So again, I'm sorry to labor the point to your audience, and I don't want to turn this enlightened conversation to something sad, but the truth is it wasn't sad. It was perfect ultimately. But I had to completely
we can't just look at the world.
No, exactly. You have to release your own. You release your own ideas of grief and tragedy, and see what's happening at the soul level. It is always perfect in all ways.
So you think she was destined to die before she was 30? Since
she knew it. She told me 7 years earlier. She told me 7 years earlier why she was in this world. And then,
within that destiny, though, how much freedom do you are you of the belief that she has within that destiny? If the destiny of her mortality is inescapable, but within that, how much freedom does she have?
Beautiful question. The truth be told, absolute, because had she chosen to relinquish that soul task, which was a predestined, fated task, she could have chosen to terminate that contract at the fated level and transpose a higher outcome on that, wherein she stayed in this world and enjoyed a fruitful existence in this world. But she would not have been able to fulfill the covenant of terminating that DNA sequence in her lineage. So that would have continued as an affliction in her lineage. So it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. But I'm simply saying I see absolutely the perfection in the most ugly and grotesque scenarios. I look back at my childhood, and it was an agonizing childhood in so many ways. And I would never want to repeat it, and I'd certainly never wish it on anyone. But I also go back now and look and surrender into some of those memories, which I for a long time couldn't do. And now I'm able to do that. I'm able to project back fully into that child, clutching on to the grenade screens and in a state of absolute terror, night after night after night. And I go back there, and I've reconciled with that child, that 7-year-old, that 8-year-old, that 11-year-old, that 14-year-old. And I see now that it was that terror and trauma, which was endless, because it went on for so many years and was unrelenting. I see that was the needful furnace within which the steel that is now in me was born out of that furnace. I would never have gone into the work that I do now, which I do believe is consequential. I would never have done so. I would have gone into a life of luxury and sensory existential joy, delight. I like most people do when you're born to some extent with a silver spoon. When you have, you're graced with certain talents and certain skills and what have you. You just enjoy building a life for you. I really enjoyed the process of elevating that predisposition.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. That was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Being born in a war zone, is that literally the foundation of building you? Because you're seeing mortality right there as a young age. Well, most of us don't. Most of us, it's easy growing up. Not easy.
Most of you in the West. In the West,
yeah.
I've spent most of the last 2 years in Africa, and I've lived for 18 years in Asia. In Indonesia. I've traveled the world constantly, and I've spent a lot of time in Mexico recently in the last 2 years. But certainly in Africa, I can say that no, most people in Africa have a very brutalist reference to life. I mean, they are able to look and see a lot of sufferance in their life almost from day one. There's a lot of death, a lot of pestilence, a lot of poverty, a lot of violence. And poverty, I'd say is the main one. But that is something which crushes the soul. If you cannot feed your family as a man, as a mother, you can't feed your child because your tits have run dry. That's desperately serious stuff that really taps into the essence of who we are, as a living soul. And millions and millions of souls in the so-called developing world are living like that all the time.
It must be, as you travel the world, that must be also hard to bear. I mean, I know you're talking about the journeys where maybe they chose this journey, but it must have a weight on you because, I mean, you're such a humanist too, to see that. Do you see a battle on the world just between dark and light? Is this what you're talking about? We've always had this, and now light's sort
No,
of winning?
no, no, I don't. I don't see that battle out there. I'm too smart nowadays to see that. I recognize that the only battle that ever existed was the one that I'm having internally in that sense. But I've honestly moved into a state, I believe, a state of grace, more or less, where I'm able to. I can still look out there and see that things are playing out on the hologram. You know, the conflagration in Iran right now, one could look to that. One could look to the conflagration in Palestine and Israel. One could look to Sudan, South Sudan. One could look to 85, 95 different theaters of war that are taking place right now in the world. But I recognize the fact that it is the collective souls in those geolocations who are involved in the linguistic cascade in their own blood, cultural linguistics. They are wrapped up and still working through old programs and old epigenetic and linguistical programs that need to be absolved into the geometry of this new light. So they're choosing to be born into that theater, and they are participating in that dialectic for a time until they've done that work and they begin to alchemize inwardly. Now, here's the rub. We generally only turn the lens inwardly and begin to do that inner alchemy once we have suffered sufficiently. So This is the point. I say to a number of younger people today who are arrogant, who are very entitled, who weep and wail at every turn and complain and bitch and gripe and think they're having a hard time. Shut the fuck up. You haven't the faintest idea what true sufferance is. And the only thing I learned from you is that you have not yet suffered sufficiently. So continue walking out into life with that attitude, and you will invoke the yoke of sufferance soon enough. It will come back at you and it will bite you in the arse. So, advice: go out and affirm. Police everything you say, everything you think, everything you say and give expression to in this world. Because if you are not affirming, augmenting, expanding, or creating, you are doing the other. You are bitching and whining and complaining and playing victim. And so long as you're putting out those signals, you are inviting the zeta reticulan, Sabbatean, draconian elements out there. And God knows they are interfolded interdimensionally into our reality matrix. You are literally throwing up antennas saying, hey, come and eat me alive, beat me up, give me a cancer, give me a car accident, give me
a mental disease.
Give me some contrast against which I can actually define real reality, which is angelic indigo nature. So ultimately, we alchemize through pain and through sufferance. But when we're smart enough, like me, that we don't go out into the world viewing a war out there. There is no war out there. There is only a playground and a blank canvas, which is a confluence of all sorts of dialectics and games that are being projected onto that. I'm not going to take any of those too seriously. It's why I won't get worked up into a lather about Palestine. Because the invitation is to simply put our plasma in and start champing at the bit. And no, you're getting pulled into a goddamn dialectic, and the plasma of your attention, your psycho-intellectual, psycho-emotional, and even psychosexual plasma is being harvested into that dialectic. You are literally feeding the egregore, which is going to maintain that status quo until such time as you withdraw your psycho-emotional attachment to so-called reality, which is actually false light reality. So stop feeding the beast in that sense. And the sooner we all withdraw into the state of grace, the state of witness, the I am, get on with goodly, godly actions, right action, and pure truth. And this world is an incredible canvas upon which we can paint almost any dream of any order of magnitude.
Yeah, I mean, we really are in a sea of miracles. The world as it is. I live in a bus going around Australia, and every day I'm just blown away by the majesticness of the planet. But what I want to say is, victim in Australia, victimhood is rife. Everyone, and Martin will tell you, we'll meet people our age and they go, oh, I've got ADHD and I've got this and I've got this. And it's like badges of honor. And do you think it's them searching for meaning, that suddenly if I've got an affliction, I've got a meaning, or I've got a purpose or something? And how would that go in this world of abundance? Because people derive so much meaning from their suffering, whether it's real or imaginary. How would they go there in a place where maybe we've transcended that? Just in their human nature. Does that make sense?
I don't fully understand the question. Forgive me. I'm trying to tune in. I don't fully get it. Try and break it down.
It's just if you're moving to a world of transcendence and a world of abundance, I meet so many people who are caught up with self-worth issues. They're becoming victims because the victim gives them an identity. The people I meet seem so far from where you are. How do they make that journey and catch up to what you're seeing? Because it's quite extraordinary.
They don't. To a certain point, they don't until they surrender that hubris, because it is hubris. To be a victim is to be calcified ego. You can only believe yourself to be a victim when you are entrenched in false light, which is your egoic nature. If you transmute and transcend ego and move into the super dimension and superluminal aspect of self, you can never identify with being a victim, because you can only see God's grace and the geometry of perfection in every aspect of life and so-called reality. So it's, again, this is one of those dichotomies. Everyone has to work that one out themselves, but you don't get to serendipity, to that grace point, if you are hanging on and hauling along all the baggage and the anchor. At some point, you've got to just sit down on the side of the road and gaze at your navel, pull your head out of your own ass, and stop playing that victim game. Again, that's why I say the smartest thing to do is just to police everything that comes out of the mouth, because every time we give expression to negation, anything that is not affirmative, don't express it. Say nothing. Nothing. Zip. Say nothing. That is real alchemy there. That is real wisdom, is to STF, exclamation mark, shut the fuck up. Because your expressions, if they are not affirming, are, as we all know, casting spells upon ourselves. And we just feed this demiurge and offer ourselves up to this meta elements, which can and do engineer and orchestrate a calamity and catastrophe in our lives. But ultimately, I am master and commander. I am the navigation set. I am the alpha and the omega. I mean, I'm navigating on average 7-8 hours a day now, every day, of Zoom meetings.
Wow.
I normally do 2 to 3 interviews, sometimes a day, but certainly in the course of a week, I'm anywhere between 5 and 10 interviews. And I've got a very, very busy schedule. I don't take my life too seriously. I just 2 hours ago was addressing the sovereign king of Hawaii with our New Earth Exchange team in a secure platform before we address his House of Nobles tomorrow and his Attorney General. An hour before that, I was on with the Congress of African Kings. About a dozen of the paramount kings of kings were on that Zoom platform, and there were about 20 delegates. 2 days ago, I addressed 14 paramount kings and chiefs for about 2 hours, and 70 delegates from other First Nation people. And with my team, the New Earth Exchange team, because we built this new financial system and a payment gateway system and crypto bank, fiat bank coming online later this year, and a ghost wallet system. So anyone and everyone can now step away from that insidious surveillance and control of banks and governments who think they own you and your future. Well, go fuck yourself. No, you don't.
Yeah,
you never will. And you never will, right? So, but we've created the system. It's working. We're receiving death threats. We're getting the black notices. We're being told that we're facing all sorts of heinous, prison terms if we continue and don't delist ourselves and switch off our servers. So all the black notices are coming through to terrorize us. We've tracked and traced them. We know where they come from, not remotely afraid of any of that nonsense. And we keep onboarding more of the indigenous nations. So later this year, we expect to go vertical on this. It's so my point being, I just have a delight in doing things, making things manifest, and just enjoy that process every step of the way. And I just don't have physically the time to dwell on the them and us dialectic because, like I said, it doesn't exist. The bogeyman doesn't exist. I realized that, Michael and Martin, I realized that when I faced off a 12 or 13-foot Draco reptilian in the late 90s. And those things are real. They exist. And there's certain, the Bermuda Triangle and all these different phenomena around the world. Now, thank Christ, the Pentagon finally flashes open its turgid kimono and we can hear a little bit of truth spilling out about
I've noticed that.
Yeah, but that's a forced disclosure event. I've been involved for well over 2 decades in disclosure. I mean, when I hacked into the United Nations 17 odd years ago and became a director general there for a couple of years, I was kind of fucking around in the basement there and trying to learn the ropes and see how it was all orchestrated until I was flushed out when they realized who I was.
Be fascinating, Sacha.
Well, the point is one gets to see. In the UN at that time, I was trying to bring disclosure in. ET disclosure, bringing some of the astronauts and scientists in to the UN to tell the truth about what they knew, what they've seen. I've signed so many papers over the years, non-disclosures, where I've witnessed alien craft and things like that through the work of my foundation, Humanitad, which was 26, 27 years old. So, old stuff for me, the dialectic about them and us, I just realized now, Michael, is the time to play. Now is the time for us to paint on this canvas of life. Your will be done. My will be done. And if we can really do that piece and start to really lean into our creativity, put your ideas out there, they will start to manifest because the geometry of light has changed now, and it is commensurate with God's children. It was not so prior to the 21st of December, 2020. Prior to that, we were in the fallen light of Atlantis. It was almost impossible to manifest these noble ideas. So, just affirm, expand, augment, create.
So it's almost like BC and AC now, before COVID, after COVID. It's like,
So you're very gracious, and I get that. I get your the perspective.
I'm just trying to learn. I'm just trying to learn, brother.
But I get the perspective here that you've got this beautiful kind of empathic nature that genuinely cares, because you're a kind of latter-day Moses. So you want to lead people through the Red Sea, the parting. You don't want to leave any soul behind. And I have reached a point where I say, fuck them. No, I'm not going to. I'm going to triage my own retinue, because I've already been held back so much by people who continue to negate. And I've circled back a billion times, had the conversations, been pulled back again, holding back the whole inertia of this ascension because of relentless circle jerking and fear mongering. So people either get it or they don't. If you genuinely feel that rolling up your sleeve and offering yourself up to Cronus and the intervention through a satanic isotope needle and God knows what cacophony of chemistry going in, if you honestly think that that is pro-life and affirmative to God's grace, then you're in deep, deep trouble. But similarly, if you think that when you go and deposit money into a bank that your money's safe, you're an idiot. And if you think that going to a doctor every time you have an ache, that's going to help. And if you haven't learned by now that all you're going to get is poison in return, in the main, 98% of the time, they'll just prescribe some godless poison to you. So again,
you're right.
I'm not wasting time any longer because I'm living beyond time in that sense. We're really too dynamically involved in the trenches and in the mud of this new earth, which is too beautiful. But I personally, and I don't, when I say fuck them, I don't mean to sound callous. I'm not callous at all.
No, I understand. I understand.
Obviously, I'm a loving man. Obviously, my whole life is humanitarian.
You can lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink. It's a very
Oh,
old saying, but
exactly.
it's the right, you know. And you can't. I just like to I just like to understand, especially what I don't understand. And what I don't understand is the people who don't want to embrace their power, who don't, who just want to live in like the smallest rut they can when there's so much to do.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you are a perfect example of what you can do in your one little time in the light. There's so much you can do. And I think this is an extraordinary example. And all that, I live in a community where people, it's called the tall poppy thing in Australia. Martin would know very much about it. They just want to bring you down
I'd love to learn
so
from
they can, yeah, and it's negative. You can't do it. You can't, no, we'll see. I'm going to fly.
you.
I'm here one thing. I want to fly as much as I can. So it's really fantastic to hear sort of a totally different perspective coming from, you know, moving forward, changing, heading towards a better world, yeah, which
Yeah.
is what we need, because this world is simply not conducive for our souls anymore, you know, since all
Good,
the COVID stuff.
couldn't agree more with you. I'd like to say one other thing, and that is that every single thing that I do in this world now and everything that I state and speak to is predicated 100% on experience. So I do not promulgate theories. I'm not out there. I see this a couple of dodgy comments on the thread there. I don't do theories. I don't read books. I've not read anything since 1997. 1st of August was the last time I put down a book, and that was Lermontov, a hero of our time. And I decided I've read the greatest book in the history of the world. I don't need to read any further books. And I'm right in that. Prior to that, I'd read Proust. I'd read the whole goddamn lot. But the point being, I also realized that I must become the living witness. I need to get into the fray, not read about it. I need to get into the fray. So yes, I've traveled constantly. I meet with religious, political leaders. I'm very blessed to meet with extraordinary people, and I'm very involved in hereditary redemption amongst the First Nation peoples all around the world. So leaning in and learning from the legacy flames of these people is just extraordinary. A lot of out of place artifacts, a lot of archaeocosmological discovery and revelation that I learned through this. My life is fascinating, but only because I started leaning into it, fully embracing limitless possibilities. And I often ask how I'd managed to travel to so many places and I guess get so many things done. And for sure, I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none, and I would be the first to admit that. But in the main, the campaigns and organizations and initiatives that I have pioneered and set forth have been tremendously consequential. I'm at a point now in life where that is self-evident. I don't need to defend that. The International Tribunal for Natural Justice has done extraordinary work, and we've been accoladed from all around the world for what we unearthed and uncovered. You know, the whole world waking up to the Epstein files now, like 9 years late. Some of us were there a decade ago doing the dirty work and really unearthing that stuff, and then financing forward the judicial commissions of inquiry and interviewing hundreds of witnesses, and difficult stuff, difficult work, all done, planted the garden. The garden is now growing. It's about infrastructure now. That's why I've moved from consciousness, mechanics of ascension and consciousness, all of that, which I understand a great deal about. And of course, I can wax lyrical infinitely on the subject, but I'm more interested right now on dislocating the source code of the kingdom of the devil through divine will. And that is to replace a satanic Saturnian blood economic financial system with an emancipated commonwealth and a true cost economics 0 point economic system we've managed to build. And now we've just launched it and unveiled it the last couple of weeks, and it's moving into the vertical. So just focusing on that for the next 6 months to a year. I'm only focusing on that. I won't be speaking much to anything outside of that. And then we would have done it. You know, we addressed law, natural law, restoration of law, natural justice, and now the economics playing field, freeing up humanity to be able to transact freely and move unmolested on the surface of the earth. So doing that is now the rather boring and mundane work that has to be done. But that's actually what it comes down to. How else do we build the treasury in our own life, in our own family, in our own community, in our own kingdom, we can't build those treasuries to make our dreams manifest because the motherfuckers have blocked every possibility of transacting. Yeah. We had all our monies from the bank in the last 2 weeks heisted by PayPal and Stripe in the last 24 hours. Well, of course, they're going to do that. So we now have other payment gateways going online, routing through other servers. We're constantly having to move and genuflect, dance around the devil, and all the death threats and all the usual shittery that comes in. But hey, have fun doing it. No part of it should be fearful. No part of it.
Well, I think that's interesting because challenges are what makes us, overcoming obstacles is growing. I just wanted the last question before you went. You went about not taking negative things, but for people to join you, questions aren't seen as negative, are they?
I missed the last part. Forgive me.
Yeah, you said going forward. You said I didn't want to stop you. You said about you don't take in negativity, which I think is great. But questions aren't seen as negative, are they? Just
no. Questions are absolutely fine. I mean, I'm very happy to jive on anything. I'm just suggesting that I've learned my survival, my very own survival, depends on me absolving myself every single day, and absolving any contrast or shade or fear, and bringing it absolutely into dead center, reckoning with it, seeing it, bearing witness, and then releasing it. Enjoy, and then moving forward, again, unmolested, into this plane of existence. If I met an assassin's bullet tomorrow, it's of no consequence to me. Zero consequence. I have no fear whatsoever of yesterday or tomorrow. That's because I have trained myself to be fully preoccupied in the immanent flame of the living moment. I don't just talk about that stuff. I do embody that piece. And what can I say, Michael? There is no fear so long as one is in a state of witness, because in a state of witness, one is completely coherent with the divine will. And so again, everything becomes perfect always and always. I go out and I stub my toe and I'm like, fuck, what happened? Why? And then, this happened to me about a month ago. The funniest thing, I stepped on a piece of glass. The shard went into my foot so deeply, I couldn't get it out. I tried with tweezers, it snapped off, and the shard was lodged in my foot. So thank God I treated it with wound spray and it's fine, but it's locked inside. I would literally have to go in and get surgery to have it removed. So I thought, well, I don't have the time or the wherewithal right now. So I continued limping around the place. And then I asked myself, and it was agony for a few days, and I asked myself,
I bet.
I looked back and saw how that forced me to slow down, literally slow down everything and become hyper diligent in what I was doing. Whilst we were getting through all sorts of legal compliances with the banking mechanisms and what have you. And I would otherwise have rushed through all that stuff in my usual way and fluffed through some of it and probably missed a few critical points. But I realized the only reason I'm sat here slowly, diligently going through all these papers is because I am impeded from walking for the next few days. So again, that was grace. That was my own body, my own dharma and karma intersecting to create an event which feels like a negative, but it's not a negative. It's simply entraining us. It's a course correction. Every time you stub your toe, it's a course correction. There you go.
I wish they had a better way of correcting course, but yeah, no, I love it, man. I'm not up with you, but I do see how negatives become positives constantly all the time. And I think we're in a wondrous existence. I don't feel despairing at the moment. I truly believe that we are on our way to somewhere better. I feel like the oppression of the last 5 years have been in Australia, and all I can talk about is Australia. It's like the oppression was, for a lot of us, was ripping off the barnacles of apathy from our hull. Because that's what they've been through. We've had 40 years of easy living, and Martin will tell you, it's Australians become like, they don't think, they don't talk like you. They just talk about footy, this and this and that. But that's changing. And I can see people hungry for something more. And that's why it's really interesting to talk to people like you, because it's realizing the reality we've been living in has been like this. And that's it's actually infinite.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
You
Well,
just have courage
it's
to see.
dialing up right now. It's dialing up right now, Michael. And between now and I'd suggest 2030, the next 3.5 odd years are going to be quite extraordinary. In 2030, 2032, by best accounts, full convention with the so-called galactic spheres at that point, meaning to say that every human will be fully aware of our cosmogenesis and the fact that we are the center of the temporal universe, opposite of the Cartesian, Darwinian, Newtonian model of reality, where we've been diminished, and the kind of Darwinian, Freudian reality. We are not this little diminished species floating on a ball in the middle of deep space. We are the epicenter of the galactic planes, and the human being, you and I, are the galactic hybrid. We are absolute royalty. But only once we fully actualize and activate that so-called junk DNA. But that junk DNA is being animated and rekindled anyway by virtue of this immanent photonic light, that this new geometry of light that is impacting us at the level of the galaxy, and our movement through the photonic band that demarcates the departure from the age of the Piscean age into the age of Aquarius, which we've now fully arrived into.
That is a beautiful way to end it. I know you're a busy man. Thank you so much for sharing your views and visions with us. Thank you, Martin, for setting this up. And do you have any questions, Martin? You've been sitting there quietly. There's because Martin too is an extraordinary.
I've been delightfully sitting in the still point. Obviously, it's someone that spends more time out of my body than in it. Sacha has expressed what I know to be true very eloquently.
Yeah, beautifully.
Yeah. How can I put it? There's amazing beauty beyond the description of words surrounding us, and it's being just streaming over time at the moment. And it's all about perception.
Mm.
Indeed.
Wanting to see. Yeah.
It's perception. It's like grammar. It's all grimoire, a book of spells, grammar. So it's all about taking control of your thoughts and your perception of things, because it's limitless. So it's almost like,
oh, sorry, I thought you finished.
It's almost like you could say that AI was here a long time ago, because most people their thoughts and everything is an artificial construct based on false light.
Yes.
So you could literally, most people are already an organic form of AI. So it's a matter of it's a matter of bringing back human intelligence. It's like, to me, like the crucifix is like a man in a box. Once you unfold that box, all is revealed.
Indeed. Nicely put.
Thank you, Sacha. And I hope to stay in touch. It's been wonderful to hear you today. Take care.
Please do. Thank you, friends. Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Michael. Thank you, brothers. Please do stay in touch. Dr. Manelli is. I think you're in touch with her, and happy to connect anytime.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Mike. We're going out with Be Free, and have a great day, everybody, wherever you are. See you.
Historically, we are the debris, forgotten faces, never more to be. Instead of legends fighting for something that had no guarantees, living ghosts, we chose to live and die as their worker bees. Why didn't we break out from their height. Why didn't we follow our own sun to another life? Why didn't we scroll over all their flowers? Brothers and sisters, it's okay to be free. Brothers and sisters,